Welcome to the show. How can a Catholic in good conscience or anyone of reason and good faith vote for Donald J. Trump a second time in 2020? Well, my guest says, let me count the ways. He's the author of A Catholic Vote for Trump, and he's here to talk about it on the Patrick Coffin Show. I do want to mention that you need to have the content of the show come to you, and you do that by subscribing to the channel. If you're listening on YouTube, hit that notification bell, and would love to connect down the road. There's so much at stake. We're just coming up on 50,000 subscribers on YouTube. We want that to multiply. The show is heard in over 100 countries. So let's keep the ball rolling and the light shedding process as we fight the culture war. And if you don't even know there's a culture war going on, you are on the wrong side, my friend. Jesse Romero is here to talk about what's at stake for Catholics and others voting in the 2020 election. This episode of the show is brought to you by MyPillow. And if you go to mypillow.com, you get a special discount on his book, free shipping. What are the odds? That's my previous interview with Mike Lindell, the CEO of MyPillow. Go to mypillow.com. Patrick, my first name, Patrick, is a coupon code that gets you a big discount for Patrick Coffin Show listeners. The number, if you've got a pen handy, is 800-794-9652, 1-800-794-9652. Patrick at the coupon code of mypillow.com. Coming right up, straight ahead, Jesse Romero. So glad you're joining us. This is an important topic. This is we keep saying this every 4 years, but it's particularly true this time about what's at stake in the election. The choices couldn't be more stark, and I'm really happy to have my brother Jesse Romero, author of A Catholic Vote for Trump, the only choice in 2020 for Republicans, Democrats, and independents alike. Bold claim, Mr. Romero.
Yes, sir. And it's right here. You can get it from tanbooks.com. There you go. Tanbooks.com.
Double shot.
Amazon. You can get it from my website, jesseromero.com. Pat, here's where we're at right now. And I'll let Father Pavone say it because he forwarded the book.
Yep.
I think in one paragraph, he nailed it better than anything I could have said in the book. Here's what he says. In the elections of 2000, Father Frank Pavone, Priest for Life. Mm-hmm. In the elections of 2020, we're not simply asked to choose between Donald Trump and his opponent. We're being asked to choose either between the culture of life and the culture of death, religious freedom or religious oppression, prosperity or poverty, a secure nation or open borders, patriotism or globalism, a free market or socialism, the Constitution or judicial tyranny, law and order or anarchy. You don't believe that? Turn on the television. Just watch what's happening in all these major cities. Father Pavone says, there has never been a more consequential election in our history. The options have never been more diametrically opposed, and the choice has never been clearer. Amen. Hallelujah. Amen.
Now, I've just finished the book, and you come at it from several different ways. Before I get to those ways, I want to press reverse a little bit, and just note, you and I have shared this, the podium, the dais. We've been on shows together, and you've always struck me as a kind of Trumpian before. Talking about Trump was cool. From this point of view, not even politically, you are of Mexican extraction. You've been in law enforcement as an LA County deputy sheriff. You've been vocal about the morality at play and all the problems, spiritual and moral, that come along with illegal immigration. We can start that list with bigamy and so on. You've always been the guy going upstream against the current. Have you always been that way?
And that probably happened about 30 years ago. Here's what happened to me. I was born in Southern California, amongst what I would call the Kumbaya Catholicism of the 70s, the balloons, banners, and butterflies Catholicism of the 70s and 80s.
And Birkenstocks.
Yeah. And I was born a blue-collar, Democrat, Latino, barrio kid, the city of San Fernando, which is Little Mexico. I don't think there's no Caucasians or blacks there. It's 100% Mexican. It's Little Mexico. That's where I grew up at. Everybody there was Democrat. Everybody in the parish voted right down the line D. What happened to me probably about 30 years ago, I started watching before I went to work, I'd work 4 to midnight at the LA Sheriff's Department. Before I went to work, I would watch the program called Crossfire. It was on CNN. It was Pat Buchanan debating Bill Press. Okay. And so right before work, I'd be eating kind of a late lunch, and I'd tell my wife, look, Bill Press, he's our guy, Democrat. Yeah. He said, who is this Pat Buchanan? This guy's crazy Republican. Are you kidding me? I would sit there before I'd go to work, and every day I'd watch their debates on different issues on Crossfire. And I'm looking and I'm listening. I'm already in my mid to late 20s. And I'm looking at my wife and I'm saying, I agree with this guy. I agree with Buchanan. I agree. I don't agree with Bill Press. He's a Democrat. What? I don't agree with him again. What? It was that show that basically flipped the switch inside of me, and I started wanting to ask myself, what the heck do I believe? Have I been sold a bill of goods? Now, at that point also, I was already starting to immerse myself in the Catholic faith. I started going through a conversion, a metanoia, and so I remember the new catechism had just come out. I think it was 94. But before that, somebody had already gave me Father John Hardin's catechism.
Catholic catechism, yeah.
I'm already plowing through that, and I'm starting to realize, I'm saying, wow, the church has some very clear teachings of right and wrong, and the party that I'm from, the Democrats, they're on the opposite side of the fence of virtually every issue that my church calls a mortal sin. And so it was an evolution of thought as a result of really immersing myself in Catholic thought with an open mind and looking at the culture at large and what was coming out from, from both ends of the political aisle. And I'm starting saying to myself, oh, Anita, my wife, I said, I think we're Republicans. She goes, I think you're right. Because we're watching this together. We're going through this evolution of thought together. So that's what happened to me.
Well, back then, and I've interviewed Pat Buchanan twice, and many people are not aware, unless they read his writings, that he's a very serious Catholic and comes to politics from a unified Catholic worldview. He's sort of, I would say, anti-slogan, anti-bumper sticker. But most people on television are not willing to think things through like that, and mainline television will not permit, as they used to, a more extended, detailed conversation that gets away from all the cliches. Jesse, what happened to the Democratic Party? Let me pitch my theory. I think it comes down to a single Jesuit. That Jesuit's name is the late Robert Drinan. He was a disobedient Jesuit. He was a congressman in Massachusetts, and he was a kind of priestly consigliere to the Kennedy family. And Father Drinan gave them retreats. And Father Drinan had the personally opposed but attitude that he taught to Mario Cuomo and the Kennedys. If you read any public disputations by Senator Ted Kennedy pre-1971, he sounds like Father Frank Pavone. Very pro-life, unambiguous. And then something switched in the late 60s, early 70s. And the Democratic Party that was so identified with the little guy and the underdog and immigrant Catholics, all of a sudden is the enemy of the religion. And many people to this day, Jesse, listening right now, don't realize that switch has been pulled a generation ago. People are still running on the fumes of what the media tells us the Democratic Party is supposed to represent.
I'm with you. I think there was a lot of things that were happening, a lot of things in play. Number one, this 1960s revolution, there were just a lot of bad things that happened in the 60s. We can look at the U.S. Supreme Court in 61. Torcaso versus Watkins, they legalized secular humanism. 1962, the U.S. Supreme Court banned prayers in public school. 63 banned teachings in public schools. A couple of years down the line, you have Griswold versus Connecticut.
Yep, 65. Yep.
Yeah. And 67, here's where Catholicism was impacted big time. In 67, basically, it was called the Land O'Lakes Declaration, with the leadership of Father Ted Hesburgh. They basically decried Humanae Vitae, something you know about. You've written a book on that. And the fact is, the Land O'Lakes conference basically said, you know what, we're going to be our own magisterium, an alternative magisterium here in the U.S., and they broke ranks with papal teaching based on the issue of again, this Land O'Lakes conference. Then you also have, again, I think in '69, you have the modern day homosexual riots. Those things broke out in Christopher Street in Greenwich Village, New York. That was the birth of the, quote, gay rights movement. And a few years after that, you have, again, Woodstock, '69. A lot of, in 1970, you had the first gay pride parade in downtown Los Angeles. It was the first of something that's been annual now around the country. Well, all these things, and also amidst all that, Vatican II happened, okay?
Mm-hmm. Tumultuous time.
Vatican II was top heavy with a lot of modernists, and anybody doesn't recognize that, then they're just an ostrich. And here's what happened at Vatican II. I believe the modernist infiltration in the Catholic Church, this was their coming out party. They'd already been there decades before. It's kind of like going to a secular, bachelor's party, and you got the prostitute that pops out of the cake. By the way, I've never been to a secular bachelor's party, but I've been told.
You read things.
Yeah. And so that's what happened at Vatican II. The modernists popped out of the cake, but they've been setting up the groundwork. And so all this was happening in the 60s, and a lot of these groups, again, let's not the civil rights movement in the 60s with Dr. Martin Luther King. A lot of these groups took a bite out of the Democrat Party. The Planned Parenthood people, the LGBT people, the gay rights people.
Right. Ford Foundation, zero population.
And so the Democrat Party has basically at this point morphed into something that John F. Kennedy and Robert F. Kennedy would not recognize today.
Mm-hmm. I think you're right in the identification at a kind of a visceral level that President Trump has with people that used to be part of the strong steel industry, American-based industrial jobs throughout the Midwest. Now we call it the Rust Belt. When he gave speeches with the America First banner, that lit people up in a way that no one really saw coming. Because Donald Trump was the New York playboy. He was the multiply married real estate baron. He's a celebrity. But the things he was saying about jobs and labor resonates with ordinary Catholics who are familiar with the church's teaching on the reasonable role of the state in regulating the economy. We have this belief that, free market all the way. We have this rise of a young generation of losertarians that think that utterly free market, especially on the global stage, is some kind of panacea. President Trump, in his bones, if you watch interviews with him back in the 1980s, he really hasn't varied in his sense of what true north is and the importance of labor in the whole equation.
And also something that Trump is very big on, which is very Catholic. I mean, there's papal teachings on this, on the dignity of work, the dignity and in fact, the church is so big on the dignity of work and the working man that when you even look at the catechism, there's a section there that talks about the 4 sins that scream the vengeance of God from heaven. Of the 4 most egregious sins that the church identifies, one of the 4 is paying a worker unjust wages. Mm-hmm. So this is something huge in Catholic social teaching. And again, you're right. President Trump has tapped into this, but this is his wheelhouse. This is where he comes from. Again, he's he made his money in real estate and construction and stuff. And so he knows about the importance of the little guy, the blue collar guy, the guy that's, the pick and shovel guy. He wouldn't have these millions and billions of dollars if it wasn't for these little guys that were willing to do the hard work, so to speak. And and so he's big on that. His son, Donald Trump Jr., calls his father, and I think it's a pretty good description. He calls him a billionaire blue-collar guy.
Yeah, that captures it kind of, doesn't it?
Yeah, he's got a fat wallet, but he's still kind of a mortar, brick, and pick and shovel type guy. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah, I think his way of communicating, and we can raise eyebrows about his Twitter timing and all that content, but not only is it part of his charm, I think that's part of his character. That I think people, I mean, I admire it. I like the punch back twice as hard thing about him. I like the trolling and the triggering. He seems to know where the location of the button of his political enemies are. And I call President Trump, he's like magical face mask removal cream. Your mask has to drop when you listen to this guy and see the decisions that he's made. He's kind of the inverse opposite of Pope Francis, who does the same thing for almost opposite reasons. But talk a little bit about that gritty, direct way of communicating that he has, almost like the way men talk in saloons.
Pat, I don't have a problem with it. I'll tell you why, because I was a cop for 20 years, so I was in police locker rooms for 20 years, and also in the midst of that, I competed as a high level amateur kickboxer, and so I was in kickboxing and boxing gyms for about 15 years, and so I've heard there's nothing that I haven't heard, and the fact is I'm not a prude. I'm not going to hold this guy to Catholic standards, okay? He's not formed like you and I are. But the fact is, I actually find it a breath of fresh air that this guy is, like you said, he's punching back, because this guy is consistently criticized. Him, his wife, his kids, 7 days a week, nonstop, unfairly treated by the media. And guess what? You probably would be indignant yourself. You probably would be mad yourself. And so the truth be told, his language doesn't bother me much, okay? A lot of guys swear. The guy who wrote the book with John McCullough, he's a good Irish Catholic. This guy, uses an occasional curse word. I'm sure so do I. Here's a better approach. I think we have to say is, look, this guy, he has righteous indignation. Look at the stuff he's been accused of. Horrible things that he's been accused of. And so I'm not going to worry about an occasional outburst or a little tweet here and there. Again, I've been Catholic my whole life, and I've heard good Catholics, and bad Catholics and atheists, use off-colored language. The point is I'm more concerned about what he does than what he says. See, everybody was very concerned with Obama. They said he spoke. He read everything. He stood within the markers, but what he did was evil with his executive orders. So do you want a president who speaks within the borders of political correctness like Barack Obama, but his policies, his executive orders are anti-Christian, they're evil? Or do you want a guy that speaks off color, from his heart? But when you look at his executive orders and his legislation, I can tell you this, by and large, this guy is tracking with the moral teachings of the Catholic Church. This guy has been the best friend Catholics have ever had in the White House, and I dare say that. I'm pushing 60. I'm 58 years old. I can't see a more pro-Catholic friendly in my lifetime than Donald Trump. And again, he's the last guy I was going to vote for. When I looked at those 14 guys running at the RNC, I said, okay, this guy, all right, 1 and 2, maybe number 3. He was the last guy I was going to vote for. Guess what? I'm glad he's emerged as a president, because I have no regrets voting for him then and doing it again.
The way he communicates is almost like, I think Scott Adams pointed this out, the guy who created Dilbert, the Dilbert cartoon. It's almost like he's using some kind of hypnosis. The way he repeats simple, memorable, very vivid images. Low energy Jeb, little Marco Rubio, crooked Hillary, Sleepy Joe, or Creepy Joe, whatever it is. You can't unring the bell. It's just kind of a brilliant shorthand way of communicating.
How about remember Lying Ted? That was
of
hilarious.
Course, I know.
Here's the hypocrisy, Pat. Okay, the liberal Democrat swamp creatures. You want to hear filthy speech? Okay, here's what they don't like. Because they got the market on filthy speech. You don't believe me? Just look at the filthy, venomous speech that runs continuously on MSNBC, on CNN, Bill Maher, Stephen Colbert, Jimmy Kimmel, the ladies on The View. Guess what? You don't hear you don't hear any Democrats complaining about them. All you hear is crickets. And but the fact is, here's what they don't like about Trump. Here's what it is. He's using their weapon against them because he's using the Alinskyite method. Because that's Democrats, that's what they do to their opponents. They demonize you, they berate you, they dox you, they insult you, they isolate you. President Trump remember, he was a Democrat most of his life. He's using what he learned as a Democrat, and he's using it against his opponents, and they're saying, foul, foul. You can't talk. Republicans don't talk like that. Bush didn't talk like that. Reagan didn't talk like that. You can't talk. John McCain didn't talk like that. Mitt Romney wouldn't talk like that. You can't talk like that. That's what they can't stand, is he's using their weapon against them, the weapon of rhetoric and about in-your-face rhetoric. It's tantamount to this. You're having a sword fight, okay? And Donald Trump has taken their sword away, and instead of him, plunging them with his sword, he's taken the sword that he just took out of their hand, and he's striking them with their sword. It's an insult. It's like, not only is this guy beating us at our own game, but he's using our own weapons against us. That's what's going on here.
When in the debate, he famously said to Hillary Clinton, because you'd be in jail, that was an electrifying moment. And that's the moment where a lot of people who may have been on the fence realized the fact that he said that out loud on national television in a high-stakes debate means he's the only guy who can take her down. And he's ended up being the guy who's the crowbar for both parties. He's the dynamite for both parties. I think check pants Republicans and prissy conservatives are just as irate as what I would call true red Democrats. Do you agree with that? That he's enemies on both sides equally?
Oh, absolutely. And his enemies even under his own administration. I mean, every single week you find another Judas that's coming out against him. That's been part of this deep state. This infiltration to try to take him down. A lot of them are Obama leftovers, Clinton leftovers, and this deep state that he talked about from day one. Guess what? Archbishop Vigano has just said that we have the deep state in our Catholic Church as well, and so we have. Yeah,
I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah, we have infiltrators on both sides, and these people. Just very basic New Testament Pauline theology. We got two teams on planet Earth right now, Pat. It's very simple. Let's not complicate things. You got the sons of light and you got the sons of darkness. And Archbishop Vigano told President Trump, he says, though you and I are using different weapons, we're on the same team.
Yeah, very prophetic letter. And I was very happy to see President Trump acknowledge it and then tweet about it, recommending that everyone, Catholic, Protestant, or atheist, read this letter. We throw around the phrase biblical proportions, but Archbishop Vigano was getting at some transcendent, really profound things about what everyone sees in the headlines today about what we're up against.
Let me mention
astounding.
Pat, let me mention something about Archbishop Vigano. Here's my take. I believe that God, I think it's in Amos chapter 3, that it alludes to the fact that God will always have a prophet upon the earth. And I mean prophet with a capital P. Okay, I know we're prophets with a small p based on our baptism and confirmation. I get that. But I believe there's a prophet with a capital P. And I got my ear to the ground. I'm saying, who's out there that's going to sound the bugle, sound the alarm for us? More and more, as I'm listening, I'm saying, Archbishop Vigano may be just that prophet with a capital P in the Catholic Church, because God always has a voice speaking for him, and oftentimes those voices are in exile. Yeah,
that's the biblical pattern, isn't it? The prophet in exile, the John the Baptist figure, who's
Jeremiah.
Okay, exactly. Not part of the cool kids, not ensconced in a major urban center.
The St. Paul,
right?
Continually in exile. That's the pattern. Yeah.
Quite the contrast to how Archbishop Wilton Gregory treated President Trump. This is study in contrast right there.
Pure politics. again, it doesn't surprise me. He's basically a descendant of Theodore McCarrick. And so the problem that we've had in the Catholic Church and Holy Mother Church, which I love and you love, you and me are die in the wool Catholics that take our faith serious and strive for holiness. But the fact of the matter is, we gotta call things like umpires, balls and strikes. And the fact of the matter is, the big problem in our Catholic Church right now stems from Washington. It started with Theodore McCarrick, probably before him, but his descendants have all been basically pupils and disciples of, the social justice warriors, the Gallon Mafia, the deep state, and the new Gregory Wilton. He's just part of the same problem. He's a descendant of Theodore McCarrick. He was handpicked for that job.
Yeah, he's also. I mean, if you think about the episcopacy, since they can't reproduce, but they can consecrate and protect and promote each other. So you think of family lines. Archbishop Gregory comes from the Bernardine line. He was ordained by Cardinal Bernardine.
That's right.
Along with many people in that generation. Bishop Barron, ordained by Cardinal Bernardine, who James Grine identifies as also a homosexual predator and a Satanist. So there's some outrageous thing. They're so extreme and so shocking to the mind. You think, well, like, it can't be true. It's too gross. But as the sex scandals have shown, no, there's a lot of darkness hiding in plain sight, and it needs to be exposed. And I think a lot of Catholics have had a reset about who the enemy is. Jesse, so I wanted to ask you about the media. Catholics think of the media, let's say pre-Boston, pre-Summer of Shame 2 years ago. The media is our enemy. They hate our guts. They don't have our best interests in mind, which in many cases is true. But unless the police or the press get involved, scandals stay hidden. This culture of secrecy has nothing to do with liberal, conservative, progressive, versus traditional, right?
Yeah. And this is one of the things that President Trump, once again, we need him for another 4 years, is that right now the only outlet where we can basically, the silent majority can put their views out there is through what we're doing right now, social media. And trust me, you got the oligarchs, you got the deep state, you got these, the cultural Marxists. They want to take the Pat Coffin show away. Trust me. They want to take away my little podcast away, the Jesus 911 and the Terry and Jesse show. Okay. Because even that seems to be a threat for them. They want to get rid of Church Militant. They want to get rid of any opposition. And this is where we're at. And trust me, if Joe Biden becomes president, the Pat Coffin show, my presence and everybody else's presence that we're trying to, to make a difference and push all in the right direction will be gone in one fell swoop. Who's the only one sticking up for us, the little guy, against the big conglomerates? President Trump. President Donald Trump.
Which leads me to my next question about, I won't call it a shadow side, I'll call it a weak link. I'm not really happy with one blind spot in the president's worldview, and that has to do with the LGBT agenda. He seems pretty latitudinarian. I don't think it's good for the country that open homosexuals are appointed ambassadors. I don't think it's good that the rainbow agenda is somehow in lockstep with an administration. I'm shocked, as many conservatives are, at the Gorsuch-Roberts decision to include transgender issues and open homosexuality in the Civil Rights Act of 1964 under Title VII, using the word sex in a way that the authors of that legislation would never have envisioned. And of course, CNN is crowing. Everybody's happy. All the Catholic left are doing the Snoopy dance over this. Is this something that Catholics should be concerned with? Is this like a runaway train, or is this something that maybe Gorsuch was a kind of Manchurian candidate for the Supreme Court? I don't remember a big kerfuffle about Gorsuch. I remember the nonstop kerfuffle, then that's putting it mildly, against Brett Kavanaugh. Same with Roberts. Roberts sort of all of a sudden, he's in the Supreme Court, and he's not really been the kind of originalist that most people we're hoping. But just give us your thoughts on Gorsuch and the makeup of the Supreme Court, and whether you think President Trump goes too far in that direction.
Okay, let's talk about his stance on homosexuality. Remember, he's not a Catholic. So again, to be fair, I, as a Catholic that's well formed, and as well as you are in Catholic thought, I'm not going to, I wish he was a Catholic. I wish he was formed with Catholic thought, but he's not. And so, but when I say that, think about this. I mean, heck, even many of our cardinals and bishops, some of them, of notoriety, even they dissent from the church's teachings on homosexuality. And these guys are successors of the apostles,
right?
Not a Protestant president who's never had any Catholic formation, okay? When I voted for President Trump, and when I vote for him again, I have to keep in mind that politics isn't the be-all and the end-all. I'm not voting for a pastor. I already have a pastor. His name's Jesus Christ, John 10:16. I already have a pastor. I'm voting for a president. That's different. And I'm not a purist. I'm a realist. We don't live on heaven. We live on planet Earth. We live in a fallen world. And I understand that he's not formed by Catholic thought. He's a Protestant. And he just came back to Protestantism. He's not a minister. He didn't go to Bible college. And so I think he's going to look at the Supreme Court case, Obergefell versus Hodges, and he's going to look at it like most politicians do. They're going to say, okay, it's settled law. Move on. Well, guess what? Who else had that position? Bishop Barron. He had an interview with Dave Rubin, and he basically said, Dave Rubin says, so what do you think? You guys should get involved and push back? It's settled law. We're going to move on from here. Now, I give Trump a pass on this because he's not formed by Catholic moral teaching, and he's not a successor of the apostles. He's a politician who comes from Protestantism that they don't have good moral formation. But are you kidding me? Bishop Barron, a successor of the apostles? I mean, that statement, he clearly telegraphed weakness on this issue. And I think Bishop Barron and the U.S. bishops in general, I think they grossly underestimate the degree to which same-sex marriage is being used as a Trojan horse to undermine the fundamental rights and freedoms of all Christians in this country. Now, going back to Trump, here's something that I think I can't prove this, my theory. He's got, 5 kids. I'm sure his kids probably tell him and say, hey, Dad, this is a dead issue. You can't win on this issue. It's kind of baked into the culture. Fight the battles that you can win. This is an issue that you can't win now. And I think Trump was trying to do an end run. I think his thing is, if I can take back the Supreme Court with normal thinking people, okay, that have a
non-radicalized.
Yeah. He says, this is how I can undo some of these bad Supreme Court decisions. And so I believe he wants to use the Trojan horse approach. I think he was, again, it seems to be as if this guy Gorsuch happened to be one of those Judases, and he's basically fallen short of our expectations. But I think in his mind, he thinks, okay, this homosexual issue, it's kind of baked in the culture. Who's supposed to fight that? Catholics and Protestants. That's our battle. That's the bishop's battle. I think the president thinks, you know what, there's bigger fish to fry at this point. And so one of the things that again, I think he wants to fight all this is by putting the right people in the Supreme Court. Because, I mean, the culture's been eroding in the last 20 years in this direction. Are you really going to expect a president hold him accountable for something that's already been eroding for decades? And this is, again, this is the church's battle, and many of the church's leaders are just silent about this. Here's something, though, that a lot of people forget is during the month of June, LGBT month, Barack Obama would put the multicolored lights up against the White House. Well, guess what? To my knowledge, Trump hasn't done that in the last 4 years in the month of June. He doesn't play that game. He doesn't put the multicolored gay rainbow up against the White House, as Obama did for 8 years. And by the way, Obama basically Joe Biden and Obama, they're the ones that were ramming Oberfelder's Hodges right down our throat. Mm-hmm. And here's something else interesting. Biden has promised, he's announced that if he becomes president, he's going to re-implement the transgender military policy that President Trump killed. He basically said that Trump's decision to bar gender-confused people from presenting themselves as members in the military, he says it's discriminatory and detrimental to our national security. And so Biden said that's the first thing he's going to overturn as president. So, again, Trump isn't all the way with us on this issue, but guess what? Neither are all the bishops or priests.
I just watched and commented on Bishop John Stowe of Lexington, Kentucky, apologizing to homosexuals and up for his own whiteness as well in honor of Pride Month. They're not even hiding it, Jesse. The lavenderization of the church and the silence of other bishops. That's what doesn't compute with a lot of Catholics. Why don't other bishops stand up and say, that's wrong, that's crazy, let's move forward in light of the gospel without compromise? It just it happens in instances few and far between. Let me ask you about the wall. This is something that's got Ann Coulter all exercised about. She flipped into almost hysterical never Trumpism. Matt Drudge flipped as well, wall-to-wall fear and so on. Do you think that President Trump is going to make good on the promise to stem the flow of illegal immigration?
I got friends that are working the Border Patrol, and they're saying that they're chipping away. The wall is being built every single day. They're moving forward on it. Not as fast as we would like, again, because he's being stifled by Congress. Remember, they're the ones that hold the purse. Okay, mm-hmm. They're the ones that have the checkbook, and so they're fighting him tooth and nail about that. But what I think about the wall, I think that first of all, I think every one of us probably has a wall around our house. I know I do, and walls make good neighbors. I'm glad I have high walls. I think they make good neighbors. A wall, basically, I mean. If you want to get biblical, when the Jews were rescued by Cyrus of Persia and they were allowed to go back to their land in Jerusalem, God told Ezra, Nehemiah, says, oh, by the way, when you go back to Jerusalem, build a wall to protect yourself from your enemies, okay? Yeah. And Cyrus of Persia actually helped fund the wall. And so I don't think God is against walls if God told Ezra and Nehemiah, hey, when you get back to Jerusalem, build a wall. Yeah. Also, New Testament. In the book of Revelation, I think it's the last chapter, 21 or 22, it actually says that heaven has a wall. Now, some people say, well, that's a metaphor. Well, how do you know? Have you been there? I haven't been there. I'm just taking the word of God at face value. Heaven has a wall. Okay, so there's some type of boundary or border, and it says to keep the outsiders, the fornicators, the dogs, the sorcerers outside. So God has no problem with walls. Heaven has a wall. And guess what? You can't jump the fence to get in heaven, okay? You can't go through the window. You got to go through the front gates, and you got to be vetted. And right. you better have your papers. And what do your papers say? Stamp. Died in a state of grace. If you don't have that stamped in, you're not going in through the gates into the city of into the New Jerusalem. And so the fact is, and also even the Vatican has high walls. Yeah, I was going to mention that. Gated communities in which dwell celebrities who hate the wall idea. They're surrounded by a wall. It's another double standard. And not only that, most of these celebrities also have armed security guards. They usually hire off-duty cops. And they walk around with them day and night, basically all over the city, shopping and anywhere they go with several guns in their body because, they got the money to hire these off-duty cops. But the rest of us, somewhere down the line, the Democrats would like to take our guns because I guess they say that they don't trust us with guns. Yeah.
I wanted to ask you about what's going on in the streets of America and the fires and the looting and the murder and the mayhem. I don't know what President Trump can do beyond using his bully pulpit to encourage police departments and stepping in some cases, overruling local jurisdictions if they allow this absolute chaos and demonic activity continue. What are your thoughts on what President Trump could do right now to quell the violence?
I think he's doing the right thing because, look, I'm going to be honest with you, Pat. They got him between a rock and a hard place, okay? And they want to use this against him in the November elections. They want to say this. If he doesn't do anything, they're going to say, see all this chaos? It happened under his watch. We got to replace him in November. That's A.
Mm-hmm.
B, if he does something and takes some type of proactive measure, sends in the military, and one person gets killed or run over by a tank or gets shot by a soldier, they're going to say, we told you this guy was the Hitler. He was a Gestapo. He was a Stalin. We've been telling you guys that for 4 years, and he proved himself to be the evil person that we told you. Here's what they're trying to do, Pat. They're trying to create, and it hasn't stopped, one crisis after another up until November. That's what they're trying to do. One man-caused crisis after another until November, so that people will say, man, I'm sick and tired of all the chaos that's been happening the last 4 years. Let's get rid of him. That's what they're really trying to do. And because the Democrats' real goal, there was these two Columbia professors. They were called Dr. Howard and Dr. Piven. They came up with a strategy called the Cloward and Piven method. This was Columbia University.
Mm-hmm.
And they basically, it's like 30 years ago, they outlined a plan on how to socialize America, basically how to communize America. And these two professors in the Cloward and Piven plan, they basically said, you have to overwhelm the system with government spending and entitlement demands. And what's that going to do? Well, that's going to basically discourage marriage. It's going to provide financial incentives to increase the number of single moms. And we already know that single moms are the fastest growing group in the welfare industry. And guess what? People are going to have to look to big brother government as a solution to their problems. It's called the Cloward and Piven method. Mm-hmm. And this is exactly the Democrats Party. What they want to do, the real goal is a permanent expansion of the welfare state. And the Democrat Party has bought into this plan lock, stock, and barrel.
Jesse, one thing you can't fake is fatherhood. And this is something that I noticed when President Trump would interact with his kids. You see them in unguarded moments, in B-roll footage where he is not aware a camera is there. And just the way they regard him and the way that he regards them, there's a kind of a natural reciprocal respect that it's almost impossible to fake. He has that. And I find that the most hysterical never-Trumpers that I encounter who don't like me at all and want me to stop talking about this are people with father wounds. It's like President Trump is like a stand-in strong father they never had. You think of the word patriotism, right? Love of country. Well, patria is the word for father. There's a kind of an baked-in understanding that country is somehow participates in fatherhood. So when you have a strong alpha male, it triggers people.
You're absolutely right. You know, you just hit on something very important because anarchy, it's a Greek word. It means without order or no order. Patriarchy is the opposite of anarchy. Patriarchy means male order, okay? Fatherly order. Mm-hmm. What we have right now, what we're seeing right now, Pat, and I can tell you is that I have no doubt that most of these kids from Antifa and Black Lives Matters, they have a father wound. They either have no father or a deadbeat father.
Or abusive.
A horrible example of a father. And as a result of this, what you're looking right now, you're looking at cities being ravaged by kids with father wounds. I'm telling you, the father wound drives a person to anger. They become very dangerous. It's very interesting because exorcists around the country that teach on demonology, they say that one of the things that makes Satan especially vicious and evil and wicked is that he has a father wound. When he was banished from heaven, he never will have a relationship with God the Father. He was the Son of God, Job 38. The angels are called sons of God. God was his father. He sung to God. He praised God. He had fellowship with God. The fact that he's been now banished from heaven, professors of exorcism say what makes him rage forever is a father wound. And so what we have right here, again, taking it from the spiritual to the natural, you're right, Pat. A lot of people in this country see Trump, again, because the president is the father of this country.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the titles that we give him as Americans. And the fact is, he is strong. And people that aren't used to that, people that are, and let's just be honest, 73% of blacks and 52% of Hispanics and like 24% of whites grow up in a matriarchal household. In other words, dad's gone. And so mom is everything. Mom is, the cook, the disciplinarian, shuffles them to school, to sports, helps them with their homework. And so when you just grow up around a matriarchal society, just mom, and moms are nurturers. That's why women's bodies are built the way they are. They nurture. They're meant to receive and surrender and to trust. Even their body speaks about basically ontologically the role within marriage. And so what happens with a lot of these kids, especially when a law enforcement officer, I'm wearing my thin blue line.
Yeah, I'll ask you about your hat, but get some more horses out of the barn first.
So when you find one of these kids that has a father wound from Antifa, Black Lives Matter, and the police tells them, hey, put that trash can down and drop that TV, or don't break that window, you're under arrest. Guess what? They turn around. There's so much rage. It's diabolical rage. They're so wounded, so affected from the fact that nobody's ever showed me any patriarchal love, any patriarchal concern. No man has ever put their arm around me and walked with me and mentored me. No man has ever showed any type of love or tried to discipline me or guide me. And now you, man in the badge, are going to step in and be my father when I never had a daddy at home. Hell no. This is where the rage comes from. It's an ungodly rage because they see the police, the government, President Trump, as the surrogate father that they never had, that's telling them, stop the nonsense. This is right and this is wrong. And at that moment, I mean, it's just like they just have a circuit overload, and this is just something that their emotions and their passions cannot process.
You just took lines from my last week's video. I did 2 series on street violence, and the thing hiding behind all the headlines of all this rage is fatherlessness. It's not even. The social science data is so clear, and I hope it turns around. But you just kind of blew my mind, Jesse. I'm going to be chewing on this. The devil has a father wound. It's so simple when you say it. You think, how did I miss this insight?
Most Catholics have missed it. I heard that from Father Chad Ripperger. I sat in one of his lectures on demonology. It was an 8-hour class and stuff, and took copious notes. But that one, a lot of the stuff was, I knew that, cut and paste. This one jumped out at me, and I wrote it down. I said, wow, I'll never forget this for the rest of my life. It makes sense.
Another thing that gets told again and again about President Trump is that he's a warmonger. I've never seen a president want to bring troops home to get out of quagmires of wars that we can't ever win than Trump. He doesn't seem to want to fight other people's enemies. Does that go along with the America First? It's all of a piece, right?
You are 100% right. Warmonger is the last thing that you can call him. This guy's a diplomat. This guy knows how to bargain. This guy, again, he knows the art of the deal better than anybody else. He can bring some of the worst tyrants to the table and at least have a conversation. And I think it's a good thing when he converses with these tyrants. Or do we want to just constantly be threatening each other with nuclear bombs? In fact, this president, everybody is saying, he's going to get us into all these wars. Quite the opposite. this president is trying to pull us out of all these wars that we got into, these endless wars that Bush and Obama and even Clinton, they initiated. He's trying to say, you know what? This isn't the way to do it. Okay. And you could tell he has a real concern because, again, he has 5 kids and stuff, and he has 2 boys. And I think when he sees a lot of these young men coming back from Iraq, Afghanistan, without arms and without legs, I think his heart grieves. You know what I'm saying? He says, and I got grandkids as well. I think the last thing that you can pin on this guy's jacket is that he's a warmonger. If anything, he doesn't believe in getting us into these endless wars. And he doesn't want to continue, churning up these big contracts with Raytheon and Boeing and Northrop and Lockheed. And in fact, I remember even the patriarch, the Orthodox patriarch, I forget his name, but he's even said that that Christians in Syria, about Assad, because a lot of people say, hey, you know what, he seems to be friendly with some of these dictators. The patriarch, I just pulled it up right now. Patriarch Ignatius Joseph said, quote, a strong regime of government like Assad in Syria is far better than ISIS caliphate spreading death and destruction for over 5 years. Yeah. The Orthodox patriarch said the Christians in Syria were even known to march holding Assad's pictures, and his wife were even known to visit Christian churches, in contrast to the ISIS rebels who would go into Christian churches to slaughter and execute Christians. So in other words, I think Trump, you got bad guys in the Middle East, and Trump has to basically look at gradations of evil and say, okay, Assad is not as bad as ISIS. Okay, and we know they're all flawed. I get that.
Yeah, why were we willing to be ISIS's Air Force? Questions like that. Yeah, I have friends. I've interviewed that patriarch, by the way, the Chaldean patriarch. Yeah.
Wow.
And
good job.
I've got, in fact, I'm going to be seeing a bunch of them tonight. Chaldean Christians in Southern California, and I was red-pilled about Assad and the dynamic in the Middle East surrounding Syria. And if you watch this guy in interviews, he speaks fluent English. His wife's a Christian, and he's not the tin pot dictator. He ain't no Saddam Hussein.
Right.
But if all you do is consume American news media outlets, you're going to get one picture, and it's a caricature.
Yeah. Look, here's a fact, Pat. The swamp on both sides of the aisle, they've been ripping taxpayer money off for a long time. How? By getting us into foolish wars. Okay? And really, a lot of these foolish wars, who do they help? Radical Islam. Okay? And so I think President Trump, again, he hasn't bought into that. He's basically told us the emperor has no clothes. I'm not going to continue these endless wars. And I think the swamp doesn't like him because I think Trump's policy is, you know what? This ends now. This stops now with my presidency. And they don't like that because, again, there's a lot of money, Raytheon, Boeing, Lockheed, there's a lot of money to be made with these continual wars.
Mm-hmm. Let's close with your hat. Looks like Mississippi, Alabama. What is that?
Arizona. Come on now. I
Arizona. That's east of California, isn't it?
I lived in California most of my life, 53 years. I worked for the Sheriff's Department for 20 years. I loved it. Then I just felt the call to leave law enforcement and started enforcing God's law. And I became a Catholic speaker and author, and been doing this for about 15 years. I love it. I got 2 young adult sons that are street cops right now. They're working the night shift. They're working PM shift, and these guys are some of the bravest young guys I know. They're literally every single night working 10 to 12-hour shifts all night, all graveyard, with shields, with face masks, and basically just keeping the streets safe. Every single day when I see them, I call them up. They tell me one horror story after another. Let me tell you something. Law enforcement is a God-ordained job. Matthew chapter 5, verse 9. Blessed are the peacemakers. They shall be called the children of God. That's what the thin blue line is. Mm-hmm. If it wasn't for cops out there like my 2 sons putting their bodies on the line, you know what would be happening? Guess what? go ahead and watch the movie, rent the movie on Netflix or wherever you want to watch it. It's called The Purge. Take out cops from our society. You better batten down the hatches. You better board your homes. You better have a lot of guns because the purge is going to start. The only thing that stops the purge, or look at the movie Mad Max, okay? All right? A bunch of crazies running the earth because it's a dystopian society. This is what we're going to vote for in November. You want to one nation under God, law and order. You want one nation where there's liberty versus tyranny, or do you want a dystopian society? You choose.
Hopefully, a loving family member of Mr. Biden will step in and just take him out. Honestly, why this hasn't been intervened by a loved one, impossible to understand at this point. The book is called... What's that?
He's not fit to serve mentally, and I'm saying that in charity. Look at him talk. Do him a favor. He's He's mentally incapacitated to be the president of the United States. And I'm saying that I'm not a doctor, but he needs to really have his head examined, because I do feel for him, because it would be dangerous for him to have the reins of power with his lack of mental clarity.
Which is ironic. Maybe it's classic projection that the lamescreen media throw that epithet at President Trump all day long, that he's the mentally unsound one.
Yep,
I'm going to make a prediction here, Jesse. I think President Trump's going to become a Catholic. I think it's going to happen after he leaves office. And I think it's because of the example and prayers of his spectacular and reviled and ignored beautiful First Lady. I think it's her prayers that's going to lead him to Rome.
You know what? You're not the first person that said that I respect, and I think I'm tracking in that direction as well. I just feel bad that our own church, the leaders from our own church, have insulted him from the very highest offices in our church. And it will take an act of amazing grace from God to bring him into the church. I think intellectually he may be there, but again, I mean, there has to be some woundedness in his heart by the constant insults from our own people, bishops, and even those in the Vatican.
I think he has a sense of what time it is. He surrounds himself with strong Catholics. Attorney General Barr, Father Frank Pavone. I think he's got Catholics kind of whispering in his ear about what's going on. Then you've got the letter from Archbishop Vigano, which was global, epic, biblical import. I'm going to put references to the things we talked about in patrickcoffin.media, especially a Catholic vote for Trump. The only choice in 2020. We'll both hold it up at the camera at the same time. 3, 2, 1, go. Published by TAN, Jesse Romero with John McCullough. It's a great read if you are on the fence, if you are a never Trumper. There are things in here that are going to have scales fall from your eyes. If you're already a supporter of President Trump, this is the kind of thing to hand to someone else. Jesse Romero, thanks for your work, for your witness, and please thank your sons. We need more brave law enforcement, because they are that thin blue line holding back all the chaos and anarchy that Hollywood writes about, except that it's in the real world. So God bless you, brother.
Thanks, brother. God bless you too, and we'll talk to you soon.
Yep, that's your lips to God's ears. This is the Patrick Coffin Show. Be a saint. What else is there?
Hey, this is Patrick Coffin. If you like what you see and hear, and you want to see and hear more, consider joining Coffin Nation as a full member. Just click right here and find out more about what that means. Nipsey, my fedora. That's Coffin Nation, the world's largest online community of culture builders. Click right here. See you on the inside.